All right, so we are back here, another experimental log, just to catch ourselves up to speed. What we're looking at today is the repair estimator, but just to bring each other up to speed, we got to the point where we have a seller lead sheet, an agent lead sheet, an MLS listing sheet. Essentially, that's either we have a seller who's selling the home to us and we're capturing all the information, either an agent is giving us all the information on a property that's listed, or we actually are pulling the information from an MLS listing if we do have access to the MLS. So it's ideal that we have either someone on our team or even ourselves, if we're licensed, that we can go into the MLS and pull in this information. That's really the front end of it. Then you're running the information from a tax assessed or property card. Um, some folks who don't have access to that can use Zillow and such as sites that have tax or assessor data. You can also get your tax assessor data through your state. So there are details where you can go to a specific county or state where they'll actually have that information for you. That information is verifying that the square footage, the number of bedrooms for a home is actually as accurate as it's been listed. As we know, the information that is on the MLS should reflect uh, the most accurate information. But however, we do know that it is inputted by usually by agents, so that more or less 90% of the time it's going to be accurate. But you always want to do your due diligence. Then we do what is called the we map out the comps, right? We usually use a radius of under 0.5 miles, that's a half a mile radius, to understand what similar properties are going for on the market. That's very important because anytime you're going to either buy a distressed property or a property at a discount, from an investing perspective, you want to know how much you'll be able to either sell it at after you put in some work and do some rehab, either for yourself or for another investor. So if I'm a wholesaler and I want to get a property under contract, it's important that there's enough room of margins where you can actually yourself make a profit and then the investor sees a profit, right? So for example, if a property is going to cost me $40,000, and I'll put in $20,000 for repair, or let's say $30,000 for repair, and I know that the ARV, the after repair value, based on its comps around the value of the property would be, the ARV would be 200,000, then I know that there's enough room for me to actually make some to invest in some remodeling and enhancing the property value, um, so that it can reflect its comps. So that's really important. So then that's what we did, the comparable. We had gone through a comparable, um, what was it called? The comps document. Um, the what was it called actually? I'm sorry, the comp evaluator, right? So you're putting in three to four properties, and you play around with the parameters, right? If you can't find comps, you then play around with the maybe the amount of rooms. You make it a little bit more flexible. Then you switch the square footage. Then you maybe increase a little bit the area. You usually want to be in the same school zone for sure, because that's called a comparable. Definitely in the same city, same county. It just That's what a comparable is. You usually want to stick to those parameters, but you would put that in your what you call the comp evaluator. So you see that you also want to sometimes look at off-market deals that are not on the MLS. So if you do have access to the MLS, know that there is tax assessor data, uh, um, um, like places that you can go to, such as the Zillow.com or tax assessor data itself directly, where they actually have um, homes that were sold off of the MLS. So some of the homes on the MLS, again, as we know, are usually agent-specific homes where there was a realtor involved or an agent involved. If I'm an owner and it's sold by the owner, for sale by owner, FSBO as we know it, those homes won't necessarily show up in the MLS. So it's important to actually factor as well how many homes were sold or I'm sorry, the value that the homes were sold for by owners themselves as well. Just as important. Those could be used as comps as well. So use the comp evaluator as we discussed, where you're really running the property. Again, we talked about this: the square footage, so does your comp, is it what you're really doing is you're eliminating the comp. You're seeing which one is their best comp to actually match the property that you're working with or working on as an investment. So you might have a similar property that you think is a comp, but then you do some adjustments along the way because you realize that that property that you're comparing it to has a pool, so therefore that probably either adds value or takes away based on a lot of factors. So that's what the comp value process is. Right now we're at the repair estimator phase where we're using this to get an estimate to make an offer. So when we go at a property on site, what we're doing is we're looking around, we're saying, all right, look, having a quick look at the roof. Remember, this is you still have a contingency period where you'll do your due diligence and dive into deeper detail, but I still need to be able to come into on site on a property, have a look at it, be able to run an assessment really quickly so that I can make an estimate or a calculated offer, or set up an appointment for I think well, ideally you want to have an offer, right? So you can make a quick offer, and then you have your due diligence, contingent to, hey, that the water heater, there's nothing wrong with that, or the septic, or the whatever the case might be. There's a lot of things you might want to look after, or some subject matter experts might, such as your electrician, might have to have a look at, or someone who has more expertise than you. But this is just a high level repair estimator, so you understand more or less using the repair estimator, which is a tool that either you can come up with on your own, or again, I've leveraged some tools from some experts who have been in the game for a long time, where it's a smart Excel sheet that where if I put in a square footage number, or it's more or less the average. Again, based on regions, it might change, right? If I'm in Atlanta versus New York equipment versus in California, but it gives you more or less of a range of how much you would probably look to spend uh, on 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 a repair, so that you can kind of subtract that or actually add it to the existing value, the as is value as we call it, and then based on that see how much of a margin you would have to see if the investment is worthy of your time, right? So just like the comp evaluator, you eliminate properties who don't match or who aren't really as close as comps as possible, so that you have a true number that you can say, all right, based on these last three comps, I think comp number one matches my property the most because it sold at 250,000, and it has, going down the line, it literally looks identical, and I can get it. Remember, this is after the repair value, not as is. It looks identical. It's based on the work that I'll do on this home. It's probably going to look just like this, the comparable that we're looking at, and sell for that price.